I'm a big believer of having gone through that there's power in the relationships that you build. And it's easy just to say to someone, hey, I just liked your post. You better reciprocate. Better do like that for me. But if you show up for someone time and time and time again and ask for nothing, you ask for nothing other than saying, I'm a kind person. I see you. I respect you. I love you. Keep being you. More often than not, that person will say, hey, you've shown up for me time and time again. What the hell can I do for you? Like, you are so friggin' nice to me and you've asked me for nothing. Like, seriously,
Mhm.
tell me and I'll do it for you. Right. And again, that's not to say that's some, manipulative ploy. It's just, again, human nature in which if we show kindness and come from a place of genuine kindness, that's how you open up the hearts of people around you and people that you've never met.
Welcome to Unspoken Security, the raw and gritty podcast for security professionals who are looking to understand the most important issues related to making the world a safer place, including intelligence-driven security, risks and threats in the digital and physical world, and discussions related to corporate culture, leadership, and how world events impact all of us on and off our keyboards. In each episode, host AJ Nash engages with a range of industry experts to dissect current trends, share practical insights, and address the blunt truths surrounding all aspects of the security industry.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unspoken Security. I'm your host, AJ Nash. I've spent 19 years in the intelligence community, mostly at NSA, and I've been building and maturing intel programs in the private sector for about 8 years now. I'm passionate about intelligence, security, public speaking, mentoring, and teaching. I also have a master's degree in organizational leadership from Gonzaga University. Go Zags! And I continue to be deeply committed to servant leadership. This podcast brings all of these elements together with some incredible guests to have authentic, unfiltered conversations on a wide variety of challenging topics. It's not your typical podcast. It's not all polished and put together necessarily. My dog might make an occasional appearance. She certainly has. People argue and debate here. We might swear. I've been known to do a lot of that. And that's all okay. Although I doubt there'll be a lot of arguing today with our guest. But you want to think of this podcast as a conversation you'd overhear at a bar after a long day at one of the larger cybersecurity conferences, like Vegas for that matter. These are the conversations we usually have when nobody's listening. So today I'm joined by Dominic Vogel. He's the president of Vogel Leadership and Coaching. Dom's built a strong reputation and a following as an authentic leader providing pragmatic solutions to cybersecurity and leadership, and as he puts it, saving companies from evil cyber villains. Prior to opening his own firm, Dom built this foundation with over 15 years in the cybersecurity space, including roles in the financial, healthcare, and transportation sectors. He holds a bachelor's in computer science from Simon Fraser University and is based out of Vancouver, British Columbia, where he's a very dedicated family man and an avid collector of hats. As you can see, he's got his Baltimore Orioles hat on today. And so he's working on all those things in his private time when he's not out saving the world. Dom, is there anything
No,
I left out
other
of your
than
bio?
I'm just really happy to be here, AJ. Looking forward to spending time with you. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here. I mean, really happy sort of captures who you are, right? I mean, I've talked to a couple of folks. In fact, just before we came on today, I was chatting with somebody. I said, listen, this guy is the happiest guy in the world. I mean, without being just on drugs all the time, as far as I know, he's the happiest guy I know. And so like, you're infectious in a good way, in the age of COVID, infectious doesn't always sound good, but in a good way, right? You're remarkably happy and positive. It just emanates through everything you do. It's how we met, obviously through social media, actually through LinkedIn. And I was immediately attracted to your personality. You're just a beacon of positivity. So it makes me ask, as the topic of today's show is bringing humanity into security, because we spend a lot of time in this industry. It's metrics and KPIs and OKRs and there's a lot of regimented stuff and details and money and all these kind of things, right? But the humanity often gets lost, and that's who you are, right? So bringing humanity into security being today's title. I wanted to start listen, were you always such a touchy-feely guy when it came to business? Is this always how it was for you,
No,
or not?
Yeah, I wasn't always this person. I'll say that I've evolved into the version that I am today, and I like to think I'll evolve into a future version at some point as well. But I growing up, I was actually always very introverted. And friends I did have always saying, "You're so fine, you're so kind," and it's always been in me. It's just that it's taken time for me to appreciate, I guess, who I am and what I can bring to the world. And I recognize that now one of the greatest joys that I have, apart from being a dad and the other than the family man, the greatest joys that I get are just spreading kindness on platforms like LinkedIn. That's why when I'm on LinkedIn, I actually never talk about security, AJ. I can't remember the last time I talked about cybersecurity on LinkedIn. My posts are geared towards feeling good, right? It's about kindness, about positivity. Same thing with my comments. I'm just trying to bring random smiles to people's faces. And it's amazing how much the world has opened up to me and vice versa by just trying to be a source of kindness. More than anything in security and in the world for that matter, I think we could all enjoy a little more kindness.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Like I said, obviously I follow you on LinkedIn, and we've talked a lot, and it's true. And for those who don't know Dominic Vogel, if you're not following him, I highly recommend it. And you might listen. I know some people listen to this show, and it's some people are very buttoned up and put together, and I don't have time to listen to somebody who just wants to make everybody smile. I promise you, it's not what you think. Like Dom's a lot of interesting insights, right? It isn't just a bunch of fluff and unicorns and butterflies all day long. It's positivity, but in a way that actually is productive. It is helpful. It does, you do provide a lot of insights. I've obviously seen a fair amount of of your personal life in there too, in a good positive way, I think. And I think it's really important, because this is a tough business, man. I mean, we spend every day and every night, it's 24/7. I've had other shows we've talked about how this is a relentless industry. It never stops. Adversaries are there all the time. There's always a threat. People are under a lot of stress. And of course, now we're doing, there's economics and there's contraction in the industry. There's people who are, struggling to find, new places to spend their time and energy. And so it just makes it all the more important to have somebody who's able to come in and say, hey, listen, the world's not terrible. Like there's a lot of great things going on. We spend a lot of our time focused on all the bad things in the world. We're helped with that. Media does that, and social media certainly does that. And adversaries will do that with, with their campaigns as well, influence campaigns. So there's a lot of negative in the world. But having somebody who's able to say, hey, listen, the world's not all bad, and here's some cool insights on how just coming in with a good attitude matters, right? And just being able to say there's cool things. Take a minute to smell the roses is cliche, but to spend the day with your kid, for instance. I mean, your son's on LinkedIn a fair amount, and I admire that you are able to have a flourishing business in this industry, but you're clearly still dedicated to family and bringing people insights about how the world's still a pretty good place. I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how you do it. And I'm curious. We got a few questions here to go through, but I mean, listen. Just before we went on, I'm gonna share this because I think it's funny and it'll open up a story. But Dom also has a puppy, who apparently, like every puppy in the history of ever, occasionally doesn't do things where you want them to do them. And Dom was kind enough to share with me that this morning he, in bare feet, stepped into a puddle of puppy, but here he is smiling and laughing about it. Like, how do you do it every day? Like, how did you get to the point where you're like, I'm just going to focus on the good and not, burn all my energy on the negative? Like, is it something you had to actively work on? Did you go to courses and training on this? Did you just,
For me, what happened, AJ, was that I actually burned out in corporate. That was my transformation. I burned out terribly in corporate. I'm actually entering 10 years now as an entrepreneur. So 10 years post corporate. Where I was a shell of myself. So there's the corporate version of me, and that person ended up burning out. And it ended up transforming me in a way in which, or what I like to say, it broke the pieces that needed to be broken in order for me to transform into who I am today. And at the time, it was so awful. I'm thinking, why is this happening to me? But the gift of time and perspective made me realize just how grateful I am, and to the point that I always jokingly say now that, the CIO that I worked under, who was a very positive human being, I'm actually grateful that he was who he was because, and I should send him a fruit basket as a thank you, because the version you're talking with today, AJ, would not have happened had he not been that type of person. You and I would likely never have become friends had he not been that type of person. Things do happen for a reason. I'm a big believer in that. And it sometimes requires time for us to have that level of perspective, and being able to recognize that when there's no such thing as good luck or bad luck, to me, there's only we'll see. Something that may seem like bad luck, you give it enough time and perspective, it actually maybe ends up being more good luck than it was bad luck, and so that's, to answer your question, was I always like this? No, but like I said, I needed to be broken in places that needed to be broken in order for me to be more aligned with the higher version of myself. I'm very grateful for that.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, that really resonates with me. I've had a handful, 3 that come to mind, of really toxic people that I've worked with. And I could name them. I'm not going to. That's not, anybody who knows me probably knows them anyway. But I've had three, and it's interesting because, like you said, in the moment, it's miserable. It's awful. It can be soul crushing. It can be depressing. It can be angering. It depends on how they're reacting, how they're acting, and how you're reacting to it. But it can create a lot of despair, right? And yeah, in retrospect, I look and go, God, I'm really glad I came across that person because look what happened as a result. I've had a couple of bumps in the road. Most of us have, especially if you're my age. And at the moment, it's always really, really hard. And there are moments when you feel like maybe this is it. We listen, for better or worse, we live in a pretty aggressive economic system. It's you got to make your own way for the most part, or you're going to struggle. And granted, I'm in the U.S. where I think it's even slightly more brutal than it is in Canada, although probably not that much. But it's a little more brutal in that healthcare is tied to it and things like that. So it's easy to despair very quickly. It's easy to get in a position where you're like, well, this person treats me terribly, but what am I going to do? Like, everything in my world's tied to this job, and they just beat you down. And it could be for any number of reasons. And then you find out later, as you said, you get away from that toxic person. And maybe that was what you needed to go, hey, I need to see the world differently, or I need to take a risk or a chance that I wouldn't have otherwise. And unlike you, I've talked about sending thank you baskets. More than one occasion, I've said I should really send a basket to that guy, because if he hadn't been who he was, I wouldn't have made the move I made, and things have worked out pretty well. But in the moment, it's really, really hard. When you're in the storm, it's the old hurricane analogy, right? When you're in the storm, all you see is the storm. And then afterwards, maybe you see, something really good came out of it. And for those who don't know, I'm sort of in the middle of some of that stuff right now, and it's hard. But we've sort of stolen a little bit from the second question, but I think there's more you can dig into on it. So I was asking, how you got here. The question that we had put together prior to talking was, what made you decide that things weren't working, or there was a better way? So you've already mentioned you had this toxic leader that you obviously had to move on from. But there's a difference between saying, hey, I've got this toxic person, I'm sad, I'm miserable, I'm angry, whatever's happening. Was there a moment that was the moment where you're like, I've got to make a move, or was it just a series? What got you to finally take that leap, that scary leap, to go, I'm done being this way, I'm done being treated this way, I'm done feeling this way, I've got to do something else?
Absolutely. It was definitely, I'll say, gradual entry, just like me gingerly getting into a bathtub. It was basically after I burned out in corporate, I fell backwards into becoming an entrepreneur, and I never had any intention of becoming an entrepreneur. Right? I could barely spell the word. I can still barely spell the word. And as I was going through that, the first year or two, I was just thinking, okay, well, there's a platform like LinkedIn. I'm going to try selling my services, and DMs and everything was just around security, right? I, a small business owner, when's the last time you had a security maturity assessment or something along those lines? And it got me nowhere. Right. AJ, which shouldn't be a surprise. And I was like, there's got to be another way. And I was looking through all the, posts at the time. I was like, boy, there's so much negative energy here. Like, people are just, someone's posting something or being vulnerable about something, and people are crapping all over them. I was like, And I thought, there's got to be something else to this, and call it epiphany, a light bulb moment. I'm not sure, but like I said, the whole notion of kindness has always been rooted in me. As a very, I'll say, side step to this, but I believe it's related to why I am who I am. Growing up, my mom suffered and continues to suffer from fairly severe mental illness. And again, growing up, I thought, well, this is awful. Why do I have to deal with this? It's not fair and that type of thing. But over time, I recognized that it gave me qualities such as compassion, empathy, kindness, things that, although I wouldn't wish mental illness on anyone, I'm grateful for the qualities that I have. And it came out of the fact that I grew up in a household with a parent that suffered from mental illness. Back to the story, knowing that was now rooted in me, I thought, well, what if I can just share some kindness, right? In this day and age, especially in social media, it doesn't seem to be enough kindness or positivity. I thought, what if I do things differently? What if I just leave an absurdly random comment on someone's post, telling them that they're friggin' awesome, or I'm a huge fan of alliteration, so I just come up with a bunch of random high energy words and just see what that does. AJ, within the first 3 months of doing that consistently, right? Showing up people and saying, hey, I see you, I support you, you're friggin' awesome. Keep doing that. I went from having a few hundred to a few thousand connections and followers just after, 6 months of doing that consistently. And it led
Wow.
to very meaningful relationships. I'm a big believer of having gone through that there's power in the relationships that you build. And it's easy just to say to someone, hey, I just liked your post. You better reciprocate. Better do like that for me. But if you show up for
Right.
someone time and time and time again and ask for nothing, you ask for nothing other than saying, I'm a kind person. I see you. I respect you. I love you. Keep being you. More often than not, that person will say, hey, you've shown up for me time and time again. What the hell can I do for you? Like, you are so friggin' nice to me and you've asked me for nothing. Like, seriously,
Mhm.
tell me and I'll do it for you. Right. And again, that's not to say that's some, manipulative ploy. It's just, again, human nature in which if we show kindness and come from a place of genuine kindness, that's how you open up the hearts of people around you and people that you've never met. Right. And like I said, it was a series of, like I said, epiphanies. But I'll say it's a series of interconnected events that made me me and realized that maybe I should do things differently. I've always felt, even though I am a security professional by trade, I never quite felt like I was a security person. I always felt a little different in the
Mhm.
community. I thought, well, what if I tried being differently, right? Looking at the stereotypical view of, and I was almost 10 plus years ago, how people looked at security professionals, right? As, either condescending, rude, asshole, this goes on. I thought, what if I be that?
Stop describing me, Dom.
And
That's
so
really
it's funny to the
insulting.
point now where I, people are like, wow, I always take it as a compliment to a degree, but also a damnation on our industry when people are like, wow, you're not like any other security person I've ever met. Right. And, that's what you said is to me is, yeah. And as I entered sort of year 3 and year 4 as an entrepreneur, I quickly realized that what I do, i.e. security, does not equate to who I am. In corporate, my identity was so I couldn't
Mhm.
tell who I am from what I do. It was all intertwined. But as I got farther away from that, I recognized who I am and what I do are two different things. And if I just was me on the platform like
Mm.
LinkedIn, I don't quite remember where I saw the acronym, but it's the acronym KLT, know, like, and trust. If I get people to know me, to get to like me and get to trust me,
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
I do is largely irrelevant. I could end up selling ice and it doesn't matter. Right. Um, and ice isn't meant to be an acronym for some other
Mhm.
expensive security technology. I literally mean ice. Um, yes. the,
Right.
uh, seeing that separation, like I said, having people get to know you and have that very deep visceral connection. And like I said, for me, the greatest jump point for me was actually during COVID, when a spot when we were all, we lost our physical
Mm.
proximity to one another. Those that were able to develop emotional proximity, those deep, visceral human connections with one another, saw an explosion in growth. And that's where, for me as an entrepreneur, that's where I saw my greatest explosion in
Mhm.
growth
Mhm.
by investing in that human capital.
Well, and I think you made some interesting points, that are worth mentioning. I mean, first of all, authenticity, right? It's not just about, and I know you know this, obviously. It's not just about reaching out, but like that quid pro quo doesn't work. Hey, I made a comment about you. You should make one back about me. Like that's not authentic. That's not trying to make connections. That's not trying to build human relationships. That's just trying to build numbers, right? And that's not the same thing. And people confuse the two. I know people have a lot higher, a lot bigger following than I do, certainly. And some of them have really authentic connections across the board, and a lot of them just don't. It's a numbers game to them. That's the contest, right? And that's fine. And listen, there's money in that. You can market that if you have so many followers and people pay per follower. I mean, there's something in there. But I think the point you made about it being an authentic connection, like, in sales, people, I've often said people buy people. They don't buy products, they don't buy services. They buy people, that know, like, trust scenario you were talking about. Because a lot of times, listen, the products and services, I mean, sure, there's some that are really lousy, I'm sure, and there are some that are industry leaders, but there's a lot that are really close together. And a lot of times the separator in whether somebody wants to do business is, do I want to work with this person? Do I want to know this person? Do I trust that if I make a phone call, they'll answer? Are they telling me things now that will be different when I sign the paperwork? Because you have to have that. So, I mean, there's a business component to this for those who are thinking about this strictly from a business standpoint. There is a business component to this, but I'm like you in a lot of ways, not nearly positive enough, frankly. But I do think it's interesting, the background. You mentioned your mother, and my mother had some challenges as well. In retrospect, I think we've all figured out a bit more what that might have been prior to knowing at the time. And so we both came from a background that had some similarities. I'm not going to try to make a comparative. And I think we've had some of the same similarities in business of working with toxic people. And lo and behold, I think I'm sort of on the journey you're on. I'm behind you. Essentially, I'm getting a little more positive annually, I think. I mean, those who know me closely, maybe we'll argue about this later. But I try certainly to do that, right? I had somebody like in the last couple of years, people have said you're such an optimist, and that is not something that I would have been described as a younger person. But I do try to see the positive in it, and more importantly, I think like you, I'm all about the people, right? It's about the connection. It's about people. It's about how can I help? Whenever somebody reaches out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm sure some people probably think it's a script at this point. It really isn't. But if somebody reaches out to connect and it's something somebody wanted to connect with, my response is always virtually the same. Thanks for reaching out to connect. How can I help? And I mean it. It's not a script. It's all handwritten, and occasionally there's typos in there as a result. But I mean it. My goal is to do that. I have a fair amount of connections. There are very, very few, and none recently, that I haven't had some interaction with. Maybe it's just that simple message, so it might not be a lot. But I don't just click yes to everything. I could have a much bigger following. I've got hundreds or more, I'm sure, sitting in a box someplace that I'm not probably ever going to accept. And it's nothing personal to them. It's just we don't have a connection, and I don't have time for everything. But I like you. It's about that personal connection, right? I want to be involved. I'm active on LinkedIn. I comment on posts, and I try to be positive. I'm not always. Listen, I've got my negativity on things I feel strongly about, I suppose. But I'm trying. I think I feel like I'm on that journey with you. I don't know if I'll ever be quite as positive as you. You're the only person I know who steps in dog pee in the morning and shows up on camera laughing and smiling about it. I think I might still be a little bitter, frankly. But so I got more to learn from you. But I'm curious. So you've been on this journey, and so there's two things that come to mind on this. The first one, I don't have much time for. I know we're running a little short on time. Dom's such a busy guy. He actually has something coming up right after this, which is going to force me to actually stay on schedule and not run an hour and 20-minute show today. But the first thing I want, just like 10 seconds or 15, you mentioned burnout. Like, what did burnout look like to you? Like, what did it look and feel like when you said, "Hey, I'm burnt out"? Like, what were the indicators for you? Like, I'm burnt. I gotta stop doing this. Like, how toxic was it? What was
the burnout for me? It was actually I didn't actually fully recognize it. It was my wife, and she said, "I don't recognize you." She said, "You are so cynical. You're so jaded. You're so negative. When you come home, you're exhausted, and you just want to be by yourself." She's like, "That's not you, right?" And that was the awakening moment for me. And my daughter was little at the time. My daughter, who's 14 now, remembers my corporate days. My son he wasn't born, right? So to him, working is this. I'm glad he doesn't know corporate me.
Yep. Yeah. And I can appreciate that. I had a similar, again, experience. We have a lot in common in this way. And again, it was a partner that told me too. I didn't realize just how miserable I was until it was somebody who said, "Hey, I'm worried about you." And then I had to take an assessment. I was like, "God, I really am miserable." You're right. Like all the minutes of the day, like that's what it came down. It was true. Like when I was at work, I was unhappy. When I was at home, I was thinking about work and being unhappy. Plus I had a toxic boss who would call me at all hours of the day and night. So I was always working. The weekend, all I was dreading was Monday. Like it was invasive. Right. But I still hadn't quite noticed it until somebody said, "Hey, I'm worried for you." And I was like, "Yeah, this is bad. I gotta make a move to something else." So it's interesting to see it work out the same way. And then, so now that you've made this transition, you're 10 years down the road, as you said, as an entrepreneur, you're out of corporate, you're free of that toxicity. You're just the nicest, kindest, happiest person I probably have ever come across. Can you talk a bit about like the results of your way of connecting with people? What are the impacts you've seen on them? What are the impacts you've seen on yourself? You mentioned a little bit of that, but now you're 10 years down the road, and by the way, I think we can all talk about the impacts of your mental health and how it feels, which I do want to. But I know for some who are listening, if they're still with us at this point, they're going to ask about the business aspect too, because there's some people that's just how their mind works, right? So, how is it translated to business as well?
I'll start with this story. So, on LinkedIn, like I mentioned, I never post about security because I noticed that when I would post about security, I would get very little in the way of leads or any engagement, and I post about something meaningful or a life lesson as a parent, and then I ended up getting more business as a result of that post. I thought, okay, well, I'm going to stop talking about security because I've come to now realize for the most part, people don't really give a crap about cybersecurity unless they have to, right? So I thought, okay, maybe it's a true story, right? It took me almost 20 years to figure that out, but I was like, okay, well, let's change the script here. And, when I post about the things I post about and this story sort of to me epitomizes why I don't post about cybersecurity. Someone that has followed me for years, she and I were catching up, and she said, "Dom, you don't know this, but like past 6 months, I was going through a real dark time. Your posts were one of the things that was like a bright light I would look forward to every day. I always knew that at least at some point during the day, your posts and your comments would make me smile." And I just had the biggest cry when she said that. I was happy tears because I thought that's why I post, right? It's stuff like that. That's why I post, because if I can make an impact on someone's day, that again goes back to the deep visceral connections, right? The deep visceral humanity, right? Back to our title, right?
Mhm.
We're not human enough in our field, right? I would try to be deeply humanizing, if nothing else. And, giving even just that one person as an example, I've gotten more meaningful work from that one relationship than any other cold calling, any other, traditional, 70s way of doing business. And the quality of the work, the quality of the relationship, the quality of the clients, significantly higher than if I just set up the sales funnel or the other BS that whatever different LinkedIn gurus tell you about. And again, I recognize, and it's where I'll say it's what trying to understand what it is that your ultimate why. Like, why do you do what you do? When I became an entrepreneur, I had this grandiose vision of trying to build like a consulting company, have it be worth tens of millions of dollars. I ended up picking a business partner and all that. When I ended up building a prison. It was an actual prison for me. And in this new iteration where it's just me, I recognize, I'm not going to create the $100 million company. That's not what I wanted. What I really wanted was actually just the freedom to wear this, the freedom to be like, hey, you know what? I don't feel like doing anything today. I'm going to go spend it with the kids, or I'm going to go out with my wife for today. It was the lifestyle, right? And to me, ultimately recognizing that why was the driving force, and being able to now say, okay, yes, does what I do scale? No, it doesn't, but that's okay, right? I can't tell you how often it pisses me off, but I get someone saying, "Oh, Tom, your business won't scale." I said, "You're asking the wrong question. You didn't even ask me, do I want to scale?" Right? That's the prerequisite. I don't, right? I do not want to scale, right? So to me, as a solopreneur, back to your question of, how does this impact your business? I wish I had done this soon, right? Leading with kindness, leading with something other than security. Like I said, no one gives a damn about it. By just trying to be a good person, develop meaningful relationships. I have built a life, I built a business that I never thought possible. And like I said, the clients that I get as a result of those relationships end up being clients for years. And now, unlike how it was when I was trying to build a company, I don't have these short-term clients that really drain my energy. I have clients that are friends. I have clients that are with me for years. You don't get that when you try to scale.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? Because you're building relationships again. I've been in plenty of conversations. I've been as a vendor or as a customer, where it's everybody talks about, hey, we're not trying to be your vendor. We want a relationship. We want to be your partner long term. It's a sales pitch, and maybe they do or don't believe in it. Some companies do. A lot of them don't. But even when they do, it's for the reasons you said, but maybe not the application. It's churn costs money. Listen, going on acquiring new business is more expensive than keeping business you have. Having great relationships, you'll have a customer that will give you more latitude, more leeway. They're more, give you more grace if things don't go well, because nothing's perfect. But it takes time to build those relationships. It's hard. There's a lot of sales folks who just want to, get a relationship, move it on to the, get the deal done, move it on to the customer satisfaction organization, get the next deal, and churn through. That's their business, right? And it does create this churn and this move. We're in an industry where there are so many companies that are battling for the same business. And, listen, I probably should have just named the show. Nobody cares about security. It's probably true. Like they don't, like most people don't, right? So what do they care about then? I mean, some care about, hey, can you, am I going to get a lot of steak dinners? Are you going to give me a lot of, bonuses for picking your company? But I think most people, it's that relationship. I want to know that when I pick up the phone, you'll answer. I want to know that you actually care about my problem, that you're going to listen. You're not going to shuffle me off. There's a lot of value in that. But it's hard to do. Now, I will say this. I disagree with people who will tell you this can't scale. Yes, there's a cap. You can only scale so far. I think it can scale if you build a team of people who are like-minded, though. There just aren't that many. But I think this is a kind of business model that can and should scale. It's about changing how people work in industry, whether it's our industry or any industry. If more people looked at it from a human standpoint and from a how can I genuinely make your life better? All right. I assume if I do that, the money will show up and my life will also be better for it. But if I just said, hey, how do I make this person's life better? Talk to me about what your problems are. It's a consultative approach in sales. It's Sandler sales for those who've done sales. But you have to actually mean it. You have to actually care. Don't take the Sandler class because these are the steps to make people believe you. Actually give a shit and just sit down and go, hey, talk to me. What are your problems? And also be honest and say, hey, I can't solve those problems for you if I can't, but I know somebody who can, because that also pays off. That person will recommend you someplace else. I think if we just had more that did that, I don't think the business is something that can't scale. You personally can't. I mean, there's only so much you can take on. But if you had 3 partners, 4 partners, if you had a firm of people who all had this as their mantra, we just care about the people, and had that trust, and had that knowledge and like and trust, as you said, and I think it is scalable. I think it should be. The entire industry should work this way, and I think it would scale greatly. But it just doesn't, because people are either not of a mind, or just lazy. Maybe I don't know if it's, or maybe they're not knowledgeable. Maybe I shouldn't make it so negative. Just haven't been informed yet that there's a way to do business like this that can be effective. Getting your message out, having more people see that you can do this. And sure, if you want to do as a solopreneur, you can do that too. And I think it's great to say, hey, I just want to make enough to have a decent life for my family and not be poisoned and miserable every minute of every day, and hang out with my kids and be a happy person. But I actually think the concept itself can scale. I think you just need more people that are willing to believe in the same concept. And we just don't have enough of it, which is, part of the reason I wanted to have you on, part of the reason, we're friends, is we need more Dominics. We need more Dom Vogels in the world, basically. And I don't think cloning's been figured out yet. So, I assume you've got a couple kids, so I assume you're making a couple of little, Doms, which would be good. So you're making some new people in the world, but it's going to take time, and that's how you're going to scale. You're going to have a family business and have the kids work there someday. But I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what you put into the world. I learn from you. I follow you. Like I said, I pay attention. I got a couple more things. I mean, we got to get to our closer question. I have a question that wasn't part of this at all, but I'm just curious. And I think others might be too. So you've got a 14-year-old daughter. You've
6.
got, your son is, and I don't normally talk about people's families, but you're pretty open with yours. Your son's 6. Okay. And that's my big question, actually, is probably more focused on him. Maybe the 14, I don't know. What are you doing for Halloween? So Halloween's coming up. And I'm curious, first of all, I don't know. I assume, like, Canada's the US. I mean, you're just here basically. So I assume Halloween's as big a deal in Canada. But like, what are the kids going as for? Are you a guy who dresses up? Does the whole family do a thing for Halloween? Are the kids super involved in it? Like, how does I don't know why, but I'm really curious.
We
about how
do like
works
Halloween here in
Vogel House.
Vancouver and the country as well. I mean, so it's always a fun thing for the kids. I mean, my daughter's now gone through it, in which she's not trick or treating anymore. She's now with her friends. I'm no longer cool. I argue
Sure.
I'm not even sure if I was ever cool, but I'm no longer cool. Yes.
You will be again in about 8 years. No, don't worry.
My son is 6, and he's just still at this age. He's in grade 2, where it's just really fun going, trick or treating with him. And this year we'll be going with some of his friends, which is great. And our golden retriever, we're going to be dressing her up. She's probably going to be a pumpkin. So we're really looking forward to that. More than anything, it's something that at least in Vancouver, we have fairly mild Octobers. So it's either going to be a nice cool night, not super cold, or it'll horribly raining. Either way, it's a ton of fun, right? So we live in the community, the neighborhood that we live in has lots of great, decorations and stuff. It's really busy on Halloween night. So I'm actually really looking forward to it. And this year, my son asked to be a happy snowman, so he's going to be a happy snowman.
Yeah, that's awesome. Of course he's going to be happy. I mean, it goes with the family model, right? So makes perfect sense. He's going to be a happy snowman. Like, listen, growing up, that wasn't what I went as, but I wasn't raised the same way. So a happy snowman is awesome. Now, I grew up in Minnesota. I'm back here now. I moved back a few years ago. For us, Halloween, we joke about it around here, because at least when I was a kid, it was often what your costume was whatever was going to fit over a snowsuit, because it's going to be, Arctic cold already. And, we've been known to get a foot or 2 of snow on Halloween. Like, it happens. So yeah, a lot of costumes were like, you had good intentions, then you ended up being the fattest Spider-Man ever, because it had to be stretched over this, snowsuit, or, your parents would drive you from house to house, or, you trick or treat for, 7 houses and go home because you had frostbite. We're the only place I can remember where trick or treating, you almost always came home with frozen candy, which is kind of the norm. So it's a little different around town here. But But actually, the reason I asked, it does sort of tie into the rest of the conversation, because a lot of people, if I ask that question, their answer is going to be, I don't have time for that. I'm working, I'm out of town that day. I got business. I got meetings, Halloween, obviously 5 out of every 7 days, it happens on a weeknight. A lot of people don't have that time. And your answer, it wasn't like, well, I don't know, I got to see my schedule. And, your answer, I didn't know what the answer would be, but I knew for sure the answer was going to be, I'm going to be with my family. I'm going to hang out. I'm going to do stuff with my family. And that's a value I think of people don't understand, that just comes with being free of some of these toxic leaders and some of these, flawed priorities, and it's not easy, right? I mean, very few people are able to go out and make that leap and build a business that's sustainable, that also, fits with their values and their morals and their goals and objectives, and feeds the family and does all those things. So I really admire that. As we're getting to the end here, so there's a closer question I ask everybody. As you know, nobody gets a free pass. The name of the show is Unspoken Security. So with that in mind, you're on the hot seat today, Dom. So tell me something that you've never told anybody before, something that, to this point has gone unspoken.
That's a good question, AJ. I'll bring this back to my corporate days, actually. Something that no one knows is that during an audit, I was dealing with an external auditor. The auditor said, okay, well, there's a bunch of red items here. What do we do about that? I had been trained to say, well, this is what we're going to do, right? Even though, I knew my bosses had no intention of ever doing it. So I said, you know what? Here's what my bosses want me to say to you, but they're actually a bunch of bullshitters. They have no intention of doing any of this. This was actually towards the end of, just as it was starting to burn out, AJ, where I was in the yes,
I'm sure. Well, it was going to be towards the end of your time there. Either way,
no longer giving a shit
answer,
phase. No one
exactly
knows that, and that is what I did.
Yeah. Well, and what are they going to do now, right? I mean, you've been gone 10 years, and so, I mean, what are they going to do, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure the auditor got a good chuckle out of it. Yeah, the only honest person in the history.
He said
of
the most honest.
Right? Yeah, he's like, look, somebody's because he knows.
He said the most honest answer ever.
The auditors know. They know it's all bullshit, right? They know everybody's lying. This is the steps we're going to take. These are our remediation plans. Blah, blah. They know it's all bullshit. The auditors know, and then they write it down and they move on to the next thing. And I shouldn't say all. Listen, there's somebody out there right now going, I don't lie. We do what we say. Okay, fine. There are ethical people in the world, but a lot of people, they're going to bullshit their way through. They're going to get to the next thing. They'll get to it when they get to it. And I will say, it's a good indicator for anybody who is either working in a toxic environment, or if you're leading a toxic environment, which you probably don't realize, but let's assume you do. That's what's going to happen eventually. Like, just so you know, like the people, when they burn out, they burn up and they'll burn everything around them. Like, it's just sort of what happens. You got to the point where, you just were out of fucks to give, frankly. And that's what'll happen, and people just eventually say the things that they mean, whether you like it or not. And it can be, it can be unpleasant or uncomfortable or whatever for those, for those who are there. I think what you said was the right answer. It's easy for me to say. I'm a big believer in integrity and honesty. I'm sure the company wasn't thrilled with the answer, but that's what'll happen. I mean, that's part of it, right? If you're burning people out, they're not going to, they're not going to put in they don't have the energy left, frankly, to go the extra mile to do the thing. And especially if it's something that is already unethical or immoral or dishonest, or like, if people just go, I'm done being that for people who just treat me poorly and burn up my life. So I'm not shocked. You're probably not the first person to do it, but I think I mean, it's a great reveal, by the way. I've been doing this a while now, a couple dozen episodes, on the books, and I get some really cool reveals, and some that you're like, that's interesting. This is one of the better reveals that, I hope the person that you worked for at the time happens to watch or listen to this podcast, go, aha, I knew it. I couldn't prove it, but I knew that son of a bitch said something. God, that was the worst audit we ever had. And I knew it was because of him. And now it's, it all comes together for me, and it probably won't happen, right? It's, 18 people.
I was quickly add to that, on that same day, this was later on that epiphany, you asked me about, burning out, and my wife saying it was sort of half of the awakening. The other half happened after that audit. On that same day, I went to go watch one of the Batman movies, was one of the Christian Bale trilogies. And I've always been someone that could feel something in my heart. I could feel fire, right? And I could feel that going away. And there was the line, I don't remember which Batman movie it was, but I remember sitting in an IMAX theater watching it. And the line was, you either live long enough to see yourself become a villain or you die a hero. And I thought, Jesus Christ, like that Batman just saved my effing life. Like, and it was actually after that couple of, my wife had told me earlier in the week, the day after is when I put in my resignation. So my wife and Batman saved me.
God, that's a good one. I think you may have the line back.
Maybe the other way, but
die pedantic. I think it was live long enough, the hero or die a villain, right? Yeah, it was. I even know the scene actually. Because he chose to take the responsibility for something else and let the world think he was the bad guy, right? It's a great line. It's a great movie.
Yes, that's right.
It was Harvey Dent, Two-Face in it. So and the Joker. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So really good movie and a great quote. But it's interesting that was like an impactful moment, right? We connect to all sorts of things, right? And I've had it happen where I've had a song come on or a movie where I'm like, that's it. This is the moment. Like this is that epiphany. We're like, that's the message. Where you just realize, all right, I got to make a change, right? And it's a credit to you that you're that person, that you feel things, right, and you process them. And it's a great line in the movie.
Credit to Christopher Nolan as well. I should thank him as well.
It's a good one if you're going to pick a movie to change your life. Exactly. Yeah. If you're gonna pick a movie to change your life or have a moment do it, that's not a bad one. Like those are pretty solid movies. Other than Christian Bale always sounding like he was hoarse for his entire time as Batman. I'm not really sure why he went with that version of Batman, but it's easy for me to say. I don't think Bale cares about my opinion. Anyway, so we're running out of time, and you've only got a few minutes till you got a client to run to. So with that in mind, listen, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on. This was everything I hoped it would be. You remain just an amazing, like I said, a beacon of light, a positive guy, but also, again, a really smart guy, a good business person. What you do matters. You're not just connecting with people. You're actually really good at the work too. I mean, you have the technical solutions. You have the ability to help people, have a better sense of security, and as you said, protect the world from evil. So it's possible to be a good guy and a good guy. Like you can do both, and that's an important thing. So with that in mind, I don't know if there's any last thoughts, anything else you want to throw in before we wrap up. I want to give you like a minute or whatever. Before we do that, if there's anything we left out,
all I want to say, AJ, is thank you for the gift of your friendship, my friend. I am very grateful to call you a friend. And if you're ever out in Vancouver, you let me know, as I look forward to meeting you in person one day, whether it's at a conference. I can't promise I'll ever be in Minnesota, but I'm sure at some point the universe will allow us to meet at some point. I look forward to thanking you for your friendship in person, but thank you for today, my friend.
Oh, 100%. Thank you. And I appreciate it. Yeah. If you come to Minnesota, don't do it in the winter, but obviously if you're ever here, let me know. I'd love to get out to Vancouver. I've been to Seattle, haven't crossed over, but I'd certainly like to get out there at some point. It's beautiful country. And if I do find my way there, I'll definitely connect with you, and we'll grab a bite and catch up. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. This has been another episode of Unspoken Security. Again, thank you so much, Dom, for being on the show. Thanks everybody for listening and watching. Please like and subscribe, and give good comments, and tell your friends and neighbors. If you don't like the show, just shut up. I don't want to know about that. No, I'm just kidding. Feel free to tell me that too, and we'll try to make it better. But again, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Dom, for being here. And with that, I'm going to close it out. This has been another episode of Unspoken Security.
That's a wrap for this episode of Unspoken Security. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. See you next time.